This is an unusual presentation in that we're going to do something that's really different than anything that's been done before in this area. The film that you're going to be part of in the making of it is going to be distributed nationally when we get through. It's going to be broken into three parts. One of the parts will be a 9-week series that I'll be doing, and there'll be two other smaller parts, 2 4-week series that Lauren will be doing. But from your point of view, we'll be doing them me 1 week and Lauren the next, and so on. So you'll get the whole picture of these, but they'll be distributed as 3 different packages. Now here's an announcement that I'll make to everybody. If you didn't know, it's a surprise. There are 17 weeks of filming, and you've all registered and you've come to the first one. Anyone who makes it through at least 15 will get a free set of these DVDs. So that's a gift to you for your being part of this. But I think there'll be a greater gift for that too. I used to do a little trick when I was working in big buildings. I would come into an elevator, and there'd be, if you ever notice when in an elevator, if there's nobody in the elevator, a person gets on, they stand in the middle. And then the next person gets on, both move to the far corners. And the next one moves to this corner, and then the fifth one in the middle. And they spread themselves out as much as they can in that little space. But if you go into a crowded elevator with like maybe 10 or so people, I would let the doors open, I'd walk in and say, I guess you all wondered why I called this meeting, and everybody would laugh. Now, they would not laugh if there were 2 people, because they wouldn't, or 3 or 4. It was only at a certain point where there were enough people gathered together in proximity that they would laugh. And not only would they laugh, they'd start talking to each other. It was dead silence, and they start talking because there was a shift in their energy. You are energy. I want to say that again. You are energy. According to quantum physics, you're nothing but energy. There are some films of a lintel. The one on your left side is before it was cooked, and the other is afterwards. See the difference in the energy. This is taken by Kirlian photography. All life forms have this aura, if you will, around them, and so do you. The middle one represents your physical body, but you have layers of energy, and they've been called all different things, and the names don't matter. It's just that you are made of energy. And an interesting thing is something called the territorial imperative. In the United States, and this is for the United States, it's different in Italy, because I've been there, from 6 feet away and greater is called public space. And from 3.5 feet, from 6 feet to 3.5 feet is called social space. Have you ever noticed when you went to a party and there were lots of people, and you walked up to somebody you didn't know, you were standing 5 or 6 feet apart, and when they introduced you, you had to literally lean in to shake hands. You had to come into that social space. And that's a space where most people don't mind having someone around. However, the next area is personal space, and that is space that people do have some problems with. That's the area from 2.5 to 3.5 feet. And then this one is intimate space. When you are up close to someone that you don't know, it makes it very uncomfortable. That is literally why people spread out in a church. Now, you don't mind sitting right next to somebody that you know, because if you're sitting right next to somebody, you're actually in intimate space. But what happens to us when we are at least in social space with 2 or 3 other people, we are picking up on their energy. And one of the purposes of this program is to help you shift your energy. And because the reason we roped these things off and got you to sit closer together is exactly that. So that as you experience this together, you'll have literally a geometric progression of experience. Everything we've done in this program is designed to help you increase your energy and to have control over your energy and literally to have control of your life. We expect that people who do this course and, a little proviso, and actually practice, because there's going to be things you're going to have to do at home, and do the reading that we ask you to do. If you do all of these things, your life will change tremendously. I've been working with people for 30 years on using energy. I built a real estate company based on energy. And we had 30 associates, and we were in the top 10 in St. Petersburg, and all the others in the top 10 had 150 or more associates. Our associates made 5 times as much, and we did it with using energy. We were able to do we had one thing that, there was a realtors banquet down at the Yacht Club in St. Petersburg, and we had 38 people go to that banquet. There were 200 realtors and realtor associates at this banquet. They had 50 door prizes. And we were doing a technique called ticing at the time, and we did that technique, which was focus energy, to get more prizes at our table, our couple of tables that had 30 people. Now, 50 prizes, 30 people out of 200, we got 31 prizes. And we did that not because we focused on getting ourselves a prize, we focused on getting our table as a prize, and we combined our energy and did that. And that was 27 years ago. I want to do something here. Let's see. We got our good, strong fellow. You're right there. Why don't you come up here? And I want you to, what is your name again? Doug. Doug. Come up here, Doug. Let's use Jerry. Over here. Jerry, come on this side of me, if you will. And I want you to stand behind him. I'm going to test him first. Anybody know anything about kinesiology? A few of you do. You're going to learn a lot more. Okay. Now, Doug, I want you to tell me, my name is Doug. Look at the floor down and say with gusto, my name is Doug.
My name is Doug.
Be strong.
My name is Doug.
Okay, very strong. Jerry, would you test that? Say it again.
My name is Doug.
Is that strong? Okay. Now, I want you to say, let's let Jerry do it. My name is Sally. Say it with gusto.
My name is Sally.
My goodness, what happened to his energy? He's not Sally. Okay? It's the best lie detector in the world. It's the difference between what your subconscious believes and what you believe. Now, you look like a strong fellow to me. I want you to hold your arm out, and I want you to really be strong. Think of something you really like, and be strong. And I want you to really not let Jerry push you down. Be very strong. Jerry, try it. Okay, rock hard. Now, you can put your arm down. Okay, Jerry. Go ahead, push. My goodness, what happened? Did you do that on purpose?
No.
What happened?
I don't know. You took away what I was focusing on.
I took away his energy. Those outer bodies you saw there, that's literally what I did. Let's put it back. Okay, put your arm up and be very strong. Okay, got it back. You are energy. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Doug. Thank you, Jerry. You are completely energy. And learning to work with your thought energy, which controls your other energies, can change your life. And not only just you, your health and your circumstances, but literally the whole world. You have an effect on everything around you. In fact, you have an effect on everything in the universe. When one atom splits, every other atom in the universe knows it, according to quantum physics. So we're going to be doing stuff, introduce you some concepts and doing some stuff. We'll talk about this energy, how it's used, and show you actually how to use this in a step-by-step process. This is a 17-week process if you do it all, and as I said, 15 weeks, and you'll have the CD series to go with it. Okay, one other thing about your tickets. Everybody got a ticket when you came in? When you leave, and if you happen to leave early, that's okay, make sure to turn your ticket in with the price you decided. Someone asked me, well, do you have a suggested love offering? No, we don't. We really don't. We want you to make a totally separate, individual decision. And there may be two of you together and you make different decisions. That's perfectly okay. Everybody comfortable with that? But you can get in for free. You just can't get out. Just fill out, yes. Oh, yeah. The money that's raised by this goes both to Unity Now and to your church. It's split. Whatever the net proceeds are is split between us and the church too. So you're in that way contributing that way as well. Any other questions? Yes, you pay each class, and you decide. Every time you go to the movies, you pay, and it's the same idea here. Okay, only except you do. Wouldn't it be nice to go to a movie and then say, "Well, here's your ticket. Pay us on the way out, depending on how well you like the movie." That's literally what we're doing, and we think it'll be very good. There was a woman who lived in Minneapolis, and if you've been in Minneapolis in the wintertime, you know it's cold up there. And she decided to come to Miami for a little rest, relaxation, and particularly to get a suntan. She was on spring break, she was a teacher, and she thought she would get a nice tan and bring it home and show it to all her folks. When she got there, she was staying at a high-rise hotel right on the ocean, and she discovered that on the very top floor, they had a sun deck. So she went up there to get some sun, and when she got up there were chairs and things, but she was the only person there. And this was very, very high up. And there was no one else. She said, "Well, wouldn't it be nice if I could get a complete tan?" And she decided to get a tan in the suit she was born in. And before she did, she looked to the north to make sure nobody could see in that way. And then she looked to the east, and it was just the ocean. And then she looked to the west and then to the south, and nobody could see. So there she was having her sunbath, and everything was fine for about 5 minutes. And the manager of the hotel came bursting out and said, "Lady, you're going to have to cover up." He said, "Why? Nobody can see me. I look to the north, there's nobody there. I look to the east, nobody there. To the south, nobody there. And the west, nobody there." He said, "Yes, but you're taking your sunbath on the skylight above our dining room." Ooh, have you ever planned things in your life and then had that one thing that you thought was right just blow it? I think everybody has. Dolores was a woman who had worked all of her life. She was divorced, and she was about 50, and she was just making money as a secretary, and she didn't want to do that anymore. So she decided to get a real estate license. So she went through all the classes, and she took all the tests, and finally, after 6 months of work, she got her real estate license. And then she had to find an office. So she knew that the properties out along the beaches, the Gulf beaches, which are run along Pinellas County, Florida, that those properties sold for a lot more money, and she could make more money if she's selling higher-priced properties. So she decided to find a broker out there, and she was driving down Gulf Boulevard, and she saw a sign in a little office that said, "Associates Wanted." So she said, "I'll stop in here." And she walked in, and she was greeted by the broker, Wanda, and the two women just hit it off. And right on the spot, Wanda hired and said, "You are hired. It's Friday. You can start on Monday. And by the way, before you start, I want you to look at our listings." Now, this was a small office, so she was going to look at both of their listings. It didn't have a lot. And Wanda said, "Now, you're going to come in here Monday morning, and you're going to take floor time." Well, what floor time is you sit at a desk, and you wait for either calls or customers to come in, and then you get them when you're on the floor. So that was all great. And she said, "By the way, you'll start Monday, but Sunday, I'm going to Europe. I'll be gone for 3 weeks. But don't worry, Sue, my secretary, knows how to write contracts. She's got her own license. That's what she does. So if you just simply show the properties and bring them in, Sue will write the contract for you." Well, she said, "That sounds easy enough." So she went and looked at both of the listings and came back, and everything was set. And Monday morning, she showed up a few minutes early, about 9 o'clock, and sat down behind the desk and arranged her pictures and everything like people do when they take it over a new desk. And about 10 o'clock, Sue came up and said, "By the way, I've got some errands to run. I'm going to be out of the office until about 2 this afternoon." And she left. Well, there was Dolores sitting there by herself, and within 15 minutes, people pulled it in, a couple, and they said, "We would like to look at that condominium that you have advertised, that Gulfront condominium you have advertised on your sign." And she said, great. She'd seen it Friday, so she hopped them in their car, and they drove down just about a mile away where this condominium was, and they went up on the elevator, and they came in, and as they came in the apartment, the woman saw the kitchen first and said, "Oh, this is a lovely kitchen. I really like this. This is just wonderful." And then they went into the living room, and everything looked great. And then the two of them, the couple, walked out onto the balcony, which was overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. And they got that dreamy-eyed look that every professional realtor knows is a sale. And the guy turned to her and he said, "We'll take it." Not offer, "We'll take it." Well, she was ecstatic. She was in the real estate business for an hour and a half, and she was going to make a sale. And she calculated real quickly, her commission was going to be $26,000. Wow. And as they're going down in the elevator, Dolores realized that Sue was out of the office. Who would write the contract? She began to worry about that. Oh my goodness, I'll look like a fool. I don't know what I'm doing. These people will spot that. And as they're driving back to the office, would you like to know what Dolores started to talk about? Just a casual conversation brought up casually to these people who had just decided to buy a Gulf front condominium. Anybody know? Hurricanes. And for some strange reason, by the time they got back, the people changed their mind. Well, Dolores was so upset with herself. She knew what she did after she did it, that she just quit the real estate business. Not only lost the commission, but she lost a career because of how she felt, because of what she said, because she was nervous and didn't feel secure. Now, any one of us could say, as armchair quarterbacks, well, all she had to do was say to the people, look, the lady that writes the contracts is out of the office. Why don't we just go have a nice lunch and she'll write the contract? That's all she had to do. But her mind, she literally sabotaged herself. Now, has anybody here ever seen somebody sabotage themselves that way? Have you ever looked in the mirror at that person? We all do it. Our subconscious beliefs are literally killing us. We are living in a life without almost any conscious thought. Put yourself in your car. Now, you drive your car a lot. You're driving along the highway, going to work in the morning at 55 miles an hour, and you're listening to the radio. Now, they're playing the same 40 songs that they played yesterday and the day before. You know the music. You know the names of all the songs. This is your music. It's the same station. You listen to it all the time. You know all the music. If all of a sudden the radio went blank, an announcer came on and said, for $1,000, tell me the title of the song that was playing just before the one we cut off. Would you know it? Honesty says, no, I wouldn't know that song. And so here you are riding down and listening to your radio that you're not paying any attention to, and you're having your cup of coffee. Now, that first sip of coffee that you had in the morning, you know how good that tastes? When you're in the car, do you really taste the coffee? You don't taste the coffee. And you're having this little conversation with the boss. Now, the boss isn't in the car. The boss is in your head. You're saying to him, I was doing my job before that guy had three-cornered pants. He doesn't know what he's talking about. If he just let me alone, I could get things done. He screws up everything we do. And you on and on. You ever had this conversation about somebody? Maybe the boss or somebody else, okay? And you're talking about this, and all of a sudden, you hear a horn honking. And it's the guy behind you saying that the light changed 3 seconds ago, and he wants you to go. You didn't even realize you stopped at the red light. You were so busy with the argument with your boss. And you get back up to speed and start the argument over again, talking to your boss, trying to tell him he doesn't know what he's doing. He isn't there. Now, here we are, operating this 3,000-pound vehicle at 55 miles an hour with a closing rate, other cars coming towards us at 55 miles an hour. That's 110 mile an hour closing rate. Not paying a bit of attention to the music, not even aware when we're starting and stopping, not even tasting our coffee and carrying on arguments with somebody who isn't there. And do you know what we call this state? We call it being awake. Being awake. We are literally sleepwalking. Let's take a look at seeing through the illusion that we alluded to so far. I'm going to show you this. There's a card. I want you to pick a card. Don't tell your neighbor, just pick a card. Everybody got one picked? Hang on to it. Look at it. Your card has been removed. Let's see. How many cards? Raise your hand if your card was removed. My God, what are you guys picking to save card? Let's try that again. Okay, pick a card. Now remember it. Okay. Your card has been removed. How many got removed that time? What? Let's try this one more time. All right, now you pick different cards, will you? Okay. Concentrate on the card that you picked. Your card has been removed. Oh my goodness. Now somebody's got to see through this. There is the last set of cards is totally different than the first set of cards. Doesn't make any difference what you pick. And that is literally what we're doing with our lives. We're making decisions based on what's obvious and not based on what is actually happening. When I was in the real estate business, I had an associate, and we'll just call her Mary. Mary was 5 feet tall. In fact, she was about 4'11", something like that. And she weighed 310 pounds. And Mary was constantly going on a diet. I know nobody's been on a diet here, but Mary did this all the time. And she was not losing any weight. And she came into my office one day and said, no matter what I do, I just can't seem to lose weight. She said, this morning all I had was 2 pieces of dry toast, black coffee, and a glass of orange juice. Then I said to Mary, but what about the 6 donuts I saw you pop into your mouth and make disappear quicker than people make jelly beans disappear at the sales meeting this morning? And she looked at me shocked. She said, I didn't do that. I had to call in 3 other salespeople to convince her she'd done that. Now, we did get Mary down by 110 pounds using mental techniques, but we don't even realize that we're doing it. We're all sort of like the fellow who was always battling the bulge, and he was a businessman. He worked in an office, and his friends were all trying to help him lose weight. And one of his habits was to bring in goodies from a bakery every morning. He'd bring these wonderful things in, and they said, look, you got to stop that. So he made up his mind one New Year's Eve that he was not going to bring in any more cakes to the office. He was going to really be serious about his diet this year. And for several days, that worked fine. And one day, he came in with this gorgeous coffee cake, beautiful thing. And all of his friends said, we thought you were going to quit. Here you are with this coffee cake. He says, well, this one is special. This is truly a gift from God. I just happened to drive by that bakery that I usually go by, and I saw this in the window. It was so beautiful. And I said, God, if that coffee cake is supposed to be mine, I'll go around the building and you have a parking space right in front if it's supposed to be mine. And he said, and here's the cake. I found the parking space. And it only took me 12 times around to find it. We're even blaming God for our choices. We're doing this, and we're not doing this consciously. We are literally doing it unconsciously. Supposing you decide one day that you're going to put up a shelf in your bedroom closet. Now, you bought the shelf 3 months ago, and you've been thinking about putting it up, but this is the day that you're going to actually put it up, and you get it out of the box, and you're ready to put it up, and you discover that the screws that you have are too small. You need to get some larger screws. So you put it down, and you decide to go to the hardware store, and on the way out, your spouse says to you, oh, honey, by the way, when you're out, would you get some bread and some milk and some eggs? I want to make French toast tomorrow morning, and we don't have any. Would you get that? And you say, well, okay. And you start out, and you look at your gas gauge, and you notice that the car is low on gas. So you pull into the gas station and fill it up, and you also notice it needs some oil, so you put a quart of oil in it. And then you drive to the grocery store, and you get the things, and then you finally wind up at the hardware store, and you get that, and you come home. Much later than you planned, but you're finally there, ready to start. And you get out your automatic chargeable drill, and you go, zzz. Your 13-year-old son has been using it and forgot to put it back on the charger. You are livid. That kid will be grounded for life. What happened to that beautiful little baby boy I had? He turned into a teenager. What a mess is he? If he was here right now, I'd give it to him. Now think about your state of mind. And the doorbell rings. And you answer and say, what? What is that person going to get? A piece of your mind, aren't they? It's not going to be a very good piece. And that isn't your son or anybody else. Everything we try to do, one thing happens, and then another thing happens, and then another thing happens, and this interferes and that interferes. Have you ever noticed you can't do a project by starting off and going all the way through without an interruption of 2 or 3 different things that you have to get? There is an absolute reason for that, which you will learn about tonight, and how to work with that. In fact, how to work with it is about what the rest of the course is about. But you don't have to have that upset when those things happen. In fact, you can actually use them to your advantage if you know how they do. You see, things are not like what we think. We have totally beliefs that are just not true. Did you realize that most dinosaurs were smaller than chickens? The majority of dinosaurs were smaller than chickens. Do you know that the strongest thing in nature for its size and its weight is a feather? Did you know that more people are killed in bicycle accidents than in airplane accidents? And who's afraid to ride a bicycle? But we're petrified of airplanes. There are so many things that we've come to believe that simply aren't true because we've been conditioned and we haven't done anything at all about that conditioning. We see things as they aren't, not as they are. Now, if you'll take a look at the red balls in the middle, you see those? Okay. Now, which one is the biggest? Which one? The one on your left? Oh, the one on your right is the biggest. Okay, everybody agrees that. Now watch those, hang on to those red balls as I make the outer coverings disappear. What size are they? They're the same size. They looked bigger because of what was around them. It is literally an optical illusion. In fact, it's a mental illusion. In fact, we are living in an illusion. Let's try this. Now, do this with your head. Go around, follow the circles. Can you see the pink circles going on and off? Just follow them like this. Do this with your head. Everybody do this. Everybody's doing this, okay? Now, stop doing that, and I want you to look just at this plus in the middle, and don't look over at the circles, just look at the plus, and what happens? Somebody tell me. There what? There's green there, right, okay? I need to tell you this. There is no green whatsoever. There is no green. And if you follow the circles, you can see there's no green. You only see it when you move out to the peripheral vision. There are hundreds of things like this that literally are different than the way we perceive them. We are not perceiving reality as it is. We think we are, but it certainly is not that way. We've had things happen to us that literally change our lives and cripple us forever. But let me give you an example of one. Helen is a little girl who's 4 years old. And her brother is like little brothers, he's 10. And he decides, nobody's at home, he's watching her, to lock her in the closet. And he locks her in the closet and she's petrified. And then he says to her, I'm going to burn the house down. And he even goes out and gets a bucket, puts some newspapers in, lights the newspaper and swishes the smoke under the closet door. Says the house is burning down and you're going to burn up. Now that little Helen is petrified. Her heart is beating. Her face is red. She's perspiring all over. She is being traumatized. Well, finally the little brother relents, takes the fire away, opens the door and says to her, now if you tell Mom, I'll beat you up. And Helen never tells Mom. She has sustained a trauma like many people have sustained from someone you thought you could trust, from a parent, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Most of the traumas we have are unintentional. When people say you're no good at math when you're 2 years old, you believe it. We've all had those kind of traumas. So now Helen is 12 years later, Helen's going along. She's totally forgotten this incident, and she gets into her first elevator, and the doors close, and she panics, and she starts to sweat, and her heart starts to beat, just like it did in the closet. But she does not remember consciously the closet whatsoever. She can't wait to get out of there. She screams and bursts out of the elevator. Helen is now claustrophobic. It took two things, one, a trauma, and two, a trigger. And there may be many triggers that set that off, getting into a small car, whatever it is. And each one adds to her phobia. And yet, before this class is out, we'll take some phobias and we'll knock them out in 10 minutes. Knock out any simple phobia in 10 minutes. There's no need to have that. There are things you can do to change any of the beliefs that you have accumulated that are literally holding you down. It is amazing about us, particularly us in America. We're the only people in the world that orders a greasy quarter-pound hamburger and French fries with a Diet Coke. We have garages stuffed full of junk and $20,000 or $30,000 cars sitting out in the rain and the weather. We have answering machines so that we can filter out calls that we don't want, and then call waiting so we can hear about the calls that we don't want. We literally are doing things totally and completely unconsciously. We are being enslaved by our habits. There is a small monkey that lives in Africa, and the natives eat this monkey, and they have a unique way of catching them. They take a Coke bottle and fill it full of peanuts, and when the monkey puts his hand into the Coke bottle to grab the peanuts, he begins to pull them out, and his hand gets stuck. Now, all in the world a monkey has to do to get loose is to let go of the peanuts and pull his hand out. He could do that. But they are so set on getting those peanuts that they hold on to the point where that monkey is dragging that bottle all over the forest, can't climb a tree, and the natives come along and pick up the monkey by the Coke bottle, and he doesn't let go. He holds on. And he's dinner because he needed to hold on to what he had instead of literally letting it go and moving on. You don't need to do that. It's amazing how they train baby elephants. When an elephant is a little bit baby, they take a big ball of cement with steel wires in it, and they put it in the ground and put a little hook on it, and they tie a chain to that cement thing that's buried in the ground, and then tie the other end around the elephant's leg, a shackle. And that little baby elephant pulls and tugs and works and tries to get away. And he does it for days. But finally he realizes you can't get away. And when they know he's thoroughly trained, and even after he grows up to be a multi-ton behemoth, all they have to do is put a rope around his leg and a little wooden stake and drive it into the ground, and the elephant goes no place because he was conditioned. So how are you conditioned? How are you conditioned that's causing you to have the upsets and things in your life that you really don't want? How are you conditioned? Well, that's what the rest of the course is about, is how you're conditioned and how to undo that. But controlling the mind is not very easy. It's very simple. Anybody can learn to do it, but it is not very easy. In fact, I would say that controlling the mind is very much like herding cats.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know.
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, Ain't a feeling like it in the world.
That we need to wave bye to that cat. Because we are hurting our mind and we're not really changing it to the way we'd like it to be. It is literally up to us if we decide to make a difference. So I asked myself, how is it that we can live in this chaotic world? I knew that I needed to meditate. I knew that I needed to do affirmations. I needed to know that I had to have gratitude, do a gratitude journal. I know that I needed to do practices, but I wasn't doing it because I was too busy with the world. There's so many things I have to do. You have to work, you have a family, you have all these things to do, and taking care of the most important tool that you ever had in your life, your mind, always is put back to the end, literally. And we're hoping that over the course of the next 17 weeks, you'll begin to shift spending a little more time on working on your mind, because it's what is literally creating your life and everything that's in it. I had this problem of how do I work in this chaotic world when there is just so much going on. So when I meditate, normally what I do is I have a little blue chair in my office and I sit there and meditate. And I don't meditate laying down because I know what happens. I fall asleep and that's the end of that. But this one day, for some reason, I decided to meditate laying down. And I had the question, how can you live in a chaotic world and still get what you need to do what you need to do? And so in this dream, I dreamed that I was on a plexiglass plate about 6 feet around, and it was way up in the air. And there was a plexiglass cylinder all the way around me, and it had a top. So I was completely protected in that cylinder. And then I was in the middle of a tornado with this black wind raging around, but inside everything was soft and quiet and easy. But I couldn't resist. So I put my hands through the plexiglass shield, which you can do in a dream, and touched the storm. And I was sucked right out by the storm and whirled around my shield, and I quickly fought my way back in to my shield. But I wasn't satisfied. I did it again and was sucked out again. Over and over again I did that. And every time I'd put my hands out, I'd get sucked out. But I discovered something, that each time I did it, I could hold my hands out a little further each time without being sucked out. And finally, I got to the point, after lots of practice, that I could hold them out into the storm completely and stay in my plexiglass shield. And when I could do that, the storm dissipated. It was gone. And that was my answer. Practice. 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 We can change our life if we are willing to do that. We have something here, and all of you should have one of these cards. If you don't have one of these cards, I'd like you to does everybody have the cards? In fact, I need a card. Someone want to give, Lauren? I'll use yours. We'll get her another card. Now, I'm going to give you some instructions here. And by the way, don't start doing this until you've had all the instructions. I know that's hard, but just wait till the instructions are here. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is put your right thumb over the word right thumb on the card. Okay? Right? Then don't do this yet. Then I'm going to ask you to close your left eye. Wait just a minute before I do it. I will ask you next to close your left eye. And then I'm going to want you to place the card about 12 inches in front of your open eye. Not yet. See what I mean? We're going to ask you to hold the card about 12 inches with your left eye closed and look only at the dot. Now, what you'll notice is that, not yet back there. What you'll notice is that if you focus on only the dot, you'll still be able to see the square out of your peripheral vision. But if you're holding it about 12 inches and you gradually, this is not gradual, okay? This is way too close. This is not 12 inches, and that's not 12 inches. But there's a spot in there about 12 inches, if you're focusing on the dot, that the square will disappear So I want you to stay focused on that circle, and now do it. Once the square has disappeared, raise your hand. Okay, keep doing it. Wait, out here, like this. All right, I need my helpers to come around and help with this. Suzanne, Lauren, help people. Who's not getting, if you need some help doing this, you do it? Did yours go away yet? Okay, hold it up. Looking only at this dot. Now tell me when it starts to flicker. When the square starts to fade or flicker. Sort of, but we're right around the sort of spot. Go very slowly. Hang on to that, and you'll be able to maneuver it into a place where it goes completely away. Here's it. How many have got it so far? Okay, that's almost everybody. We will have a special class for the rest of you after this class. Okay, and by the way, you can turn the card over and do it the other way. Now I want to show you what happened there. There's your eyeball, okay? And you'll notice at the very back, there's something called the optic nerve. And the optic nerve connects to the retina at a point right there, and that is a blind spot. You are blind. And literally what we did was to move the square into the blind spot so you couldn't see it. Now, when the square moved into the blind spot and you couldn't see it, was there a hole in the card? What happened? What happened? It was white. Who do you think filled in the white? Your mind filled in the white. You see, you have a blind spot that you didn't even know until now you had. You have a physical blind spot. As a matter of fact, you've got one in each eye. And if we were to stand at a football field and at one end of the football field and use the goalpost having the square on one side and the dot on the other, or a person, you could blot out something the size of a person at that distance. You see this as a conical blind spot that gets bigger and bigger. If you had the right star, you could blot out the moon. Literally, you have a blind spot that you didn't know that you had. You have information coming to you all the time that you're totally unaware of, even though it's there. You are not aware right now how your shoes feel until I said so. Now you are. But that same information was coming in. You just had it filtered out. You weren't using it. It wasn't important to you at that time. So literally, we are being controlled by what is happening to us. And Einstein said this, that we live in a world of problems which no longer can be solved by the level of thinking which created them. And we cannot solve the problems that we have in this world, and you cannot solve the problems that you're having in your life at the level of thinking you're doing now. There has to be a new kind of thinking. Let's take this little view. Now, I'm going to ask you to, for a moment, go along with me as if this were true. By the end of the course, I'm going to prove it's true. But just for a moment, accept that, well, maybe this is true. The little square guy there is you, okay? And on the top, he has a little projector where he projects things on a screen. And behind him, he has his little laptop, which is his subconscious mind. The Unity has an expression, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. We should change it. Thoughts held in the subconscious mind produce after their kind. And we can change the subconscious, but if we're aware that's even there. So he has this little thought that goes into the program, to the projector, and is projected out on the screen. And then our little man sees it. Okay? And then that is programmed into the subconscious. And subconsciously, he's thinking about that. And as he thinks about that, that goes into his projector and reprojects it over and over again. So there's no change. And would it do him any good to go out there and erase the blurb on the screen out there? Why are we trying to fix anything out there? We need to fix it in our computer, in our subconscious mind. That's the only place it needs fixing. And that is us. And quantum physics, which we'll talk about in the third or fourth lesson, is showing us exactly how that works, that we are creating our reality. The Buddhists have been saying that for a long time, and many mystics have said that. But now quantum physics is saying the same thing. This fellow Hegel came up with an idea, and this is the beginning of the change of your mind. He came up with an idea called the dialectic, and what he said basically was this, that for every thesis, there was an antithesis, or antithesis, if you wanted to pronounce it that way. In other words, whenever you do something, a problem comes up. Every time, there's something in opposition. But when those two come together, they create a synthesis. The synthesis is not a compromise between the two. It never is. The synthesis is as far away from the thesis as it is to the antithesis. They are equally far away. It is different. It is new. Let's look at it another way. Any force exerted always has a resistance. Always has a resistance. And the resultant of a force against the resistance is always this, movement. It always is movement. Not movement away from the resistance towards it, but in a new direction, a different way. Same is true with an action. Any action, you learned in physics, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. You learned 2/3 of what you needed to know. You didn't learn the whole thing. Quantum physics says something different. When those two interact, when there is an action and a reaction, there is change. Change in the position of a rocket, for an example. There always is change, and it always comes from the interaction of these two forces. And yet most of us are spending our whole life railing against what's against us. It's not there to hurt us. It's there to show us how, because our mind thinks one way that is not working for us, and so we try something, and as we try it, we get resistance, and the resistance is the key to getting the real answer that we need. Not the one we had at first, but the real answer. So let's look at this. There's a guy, Buckminster Fuller, and he wrote this geodesic dome. He built this geodesic dome, and if you look at it real closely, it's built out of triangles. Isn't that amazing? In fact, there's a little closer look. The triangles, 5 triangles, form a pentagon. And one pentagon after the other creates this dome, which is the strongest man-made thing in the universe. They can make these huge domes without them collapsing because this is such a stable form. If you take a square and push on the corner, you can flatten it out. Take a square box, it'll do that every time. If you take a circle, you can squish it. But if you take a triangle, no matter where you push on it, any corner, it's stable. It's the most stable form in the universe. Okay, knowing that, there is a little building built with this same set of things. So I want you to focus in on one of them, that little pentagon right there, and let's look at how the universe works. This is the way the universe builds everything physically, and it's the way you learn, it's the way you progress in all of your thinking. Here's how it works. Okay, we started at one side, went to the other. That's the antithesis. That's the resistance. And what happens? Always a synthesis. And where's the synthesis? It's above there. Okay, so we tried something, it didn't work, and we got a new answer. But the new answer, which is at the pinnacle of that triangle right now, becomes the new thesis. And it has an antithesis. All right? And that, again, turns into another synthesis. Okay? So now we have more answers. But again, the process starts over. And it has a synthesis also. And it creates that figure. But guess what happens? At the very end, as long as you create that first part, you create that much, the universe fills in the rest and gives you the complete answer. And that's why when you're trying to do something, you have a problem and you solve the problem. And then you have another problem and you solve the problem. And then you would have the whole picture and then it falls into its place. Everything you do, check your own experience, everything you do is this way. So who would be against what's against you? Why would you be against anybody who's in opposition to you? They're helping you. Why would you get upset when you have this wonderful idea and they say, that won't work? You should say, oh, great. What will work? And you'll come up with what works. But that won't work either. Because someone else said, well, that won't work. And you'll say, well, great. What will work? You go through that process, and then you'll find what does work. And your whole life, like a geodesic dome, is built on these, mentally and physically. Your cells operate on this principle. Everything operates on this principle. And wouldn't you want to have some control over that? Would you? Well, bad news. You can't control it. You can't control it, but you can do something else. This is the key to life. You can influence it. If you try to control things, that's resistance. It won't work. But you can influence everything if you let go of control and work on influence. And the more relaxed you become, the more positive thoughts you have, the more you feel good about your life, the easier this process works. And that's what you're going to spend the next number of weeks doing, is exactly that. You see, there's an expression that says, if it is to be, it is up to me. And you can get out of this haunted house that we're living in. And I made a wonderful discovery in a haunted house. In Kansas City, every Halloween they have these huge haunted house displays. They're old abandoned factories that are 5 or 6 stories high, and they build them into these wonderful haunted houses. And there was one that had something I've never seen before. It was the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. You walk through this very narrow, about 2 feet wide tunnel, pitch black. Everything's painted black. You can't see it. You have to literally grope your way. And finally, after making 3 or 4 turns, you come into this wonderfully well-lit square room with a square table and a square carpet and a vase of flowers in the middle. And there's a door directly ahead of you. You came in one door, and there's one ahead of you, and there's one on each side. And you have to make a decision. Which door do I take? So I took the right door, and I went through another little tunnel like that and ran around. And what did I find up doing? Coming back into the same room. Well, that wasn't the right door. So I tried another door. I wandered around through the dark and came back into the same room again. I said, there's only one more door. I tried that, and I was in the same room again. I was beginning to be really scared. I'll never get out of here. Well, the next door I took out, I got out. You see, what they had done is they took 4 identical rooms, 4 identically furnished sized rooms with 4 doors, and as you walked through them, it didn't make any difference what door you went. You were going to wind up in the next room, and the next until you finally got out. That's life. And we can have the most wonderful, powerful lives. I've worked with a lot of people. I've seen magnificent changes, and some of them are making films here and doing things because they've seen their lives change because they learned something, and the other thing is they practice it as well. Now, we're going to do a little exercise here, and then we're going to have a little break after that. Also, I want you, during the break, to get a copy of our affirmation. How many of you have our affirmation cards already? If you have them, a couple of you do. If you don't, get those affirmation cards, because that's the assignment. We are going to start this week conditioning your mind. There's a series of 12 affirmations that we're going to ask you to say at least 12 times a day. That means, and you don't have to do them separately. You can do 3 at once or 4 sets at once. You can repeat the 12 affirmations 3 times, and then for breakfast, and 3 times for lunch, and 3 times for dinner, and 3 times before you go to bed. And if you will, that's the minimum. You can do it more often, but doing that, don't repeat them 144, 12 in a row. You have to have some space. Spaced repetition is very important in affirmations. And you're going to say those affirmations. Within 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to notice some changes that you can't explain why you feel so much better, why things are going better. It's not going to solve all your problems, but it's the beginning of conditioning, and we're going to give you one of those cards. For those of you that like fast work, we have a power tool. We have a subliminal tape that has those 12 affirmations on it. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a subliminal. I'll see if I can show you this here.
As we gradually fade the waves, you can hear the affirmations underneath. filled with a sense of well-being. I am joyful and I am grateful. Things always work out for me.
I am God's own perfect creation. There is no other person on this planet exactly like me. I am intimately connected to all of the power of the universe.
As we gradually
God loves
increase the
me all
waves,
the
the
time.
affirmations are hidden from the
I
conscious
am
mind.
who I am.
But
and
the
I allow
subconscious
others
hears
to be
them loud and clear.
I am a limitless being. I
Now only the subconscious hears the affirmations. There's no conscious resistance. You are now receiving 6,000 affirmations per hour. You will learn more about this power tool and others during the course of this series, or you may visit unitynow.com.